Third time's a charm. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Not Church. Let's see here. Good morning, my friends and visitors to Not Church Sundays. This is mystical Christianity, the demythologizing and the use of metaphor to deconstruct dogma and doctrine, but more importantly, a teaching place to transform you directly in the magnifying company of each other by the living light, the frequency of the present Christ consciousness within us and around us. If at any time this morning or whenever you're listening to this, if you feel the magnification of the living light inside you, because you're here, please put a note in the chat or a word in the comments. Let people know. Let me know if this is transformative in your thinking, and by the process of being here together, your soul is transformed back into the goodness of what you are at the very core of your being. If you feel that frequency, let me know. The center of yourself is goodness. Now, I have a new word for you today, and the word is heterodox. It means not conforming with accepted or orthodox standards or belief, or, in our case, literalism. This word heterodox was applied to the Gospel of Thomas, our subject for today, by the early church father Origen of Alexandria before before the year 250 and the Christian era. And Bishop Eusebius, 100 years later, called the Gospel of Thomas spurious and heretical. But he's notoriously an unreliable historian, and he's also one of the early church fathers who blamed all of the nation of Judaism for the death of Jesus. And so, we don't count Eusebius among the great early church people. But he called this book spurious and heretical. And these misconceptions are maybe why it was hidden for thousands of years in a jar of clay and only discovered in 1945 at Nag Hammadi Tel among 52 other Gnostic books, or books of knowing, wisdom, noetic understanding. But they're frequently called treatises because so many of them are incomplete. All of them were hidden from the thought police of their day and rejected by the thought police of our day. Pharisaical literalism, and even, yes, the liberal churches. Both branches reject mysticism that leads to an awakening and to an enlightenment like Jesus. And I'm not going to spend any time in what's called apologetics. Apologetics is the process by which we defend our theological points of views, because I am not a theologian. I'm a wisdom seeker, and I think you are too, and a teacher who's also a student of the mystical Jesus who walked his own path through awakening to enlightenment and teaches us how to follow him. Now, we won't stay in the Gospel of Thomas week after week after week, but we're going to begin to move through it today. So, let's begin. These are the hidden words of the living Jesus. I'm going to say that again. These are the hidden words that the living Jesus spoke. Living Jesus. So why not just say, these are the words that Jesus spoke? Why add the word living Jesus to it? Because he was radiant. Because life came out of him. Because everyone knew who knew him that he was a living presence of God. And it continues. And Didymos, Judas, Thomas wrote them down. Didymos, Greek, Thomas, Aramaic, Didymos, twin, Thomas, twin, 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 wrote them down, the words down. And it says, Didymos, Judas, Thomas, twin, betrayer, twin, twin, betray, twin. There's a dualism here. And the betrayer in the in-between is the part of us that betrays us from ourselves. We can't see our twin self, our higher self, twin, and the betrayer of the veil that's in between. And the veil, we can see that in the Gospel of Mark. When Jesus is down by the river and he gets baptized by John, and the Spirit descends on him like a dove, metaphor, and the veil, it says, of heaven is torn open, and he receives an awakening, metaphorically, that bird. And the betrayer in that is the veil, torn open, and he sees himself, twin, one thing. The twins are mirrors of themselves. And the heaven tears open, and he sees that part of his twin, and we have the same twin nature. We have the twin nature. We are both higher self and incarnate self, but really there's no difference between them. And now here's the first one. That was just the opening. And here's the first one. And he said, whoever finds the meaning of these words will not taste death. A taste for death. We all seem to have a taste for death. But whoever finds these meanings of these words will not, another translation, experience death. A key is needed to understand the meaning of these words. And all of the words of Jesus and all of the teachings of Jesus, a single key opens them up. And what's that key? It's that he spoke in metaphor and that his life is a journey of awakening to enlightenment. And somehow or other, through no doing of my own, I came back with a key to the gate of heaven when I died and visited God. I came back here with the key, and I didn't mean to have this key, and I kept it to myself for all these decades, because to preach out of the Gospel of Thomas is heretical. It's heterodox book. It's outside of orthodoxy. And to see Jesus as a speaker of enlightenment, of a teacher of awakening, of a person like us, that was heresy. But for some reason or other, when I came back, I saw him for who he is, a teacher of enlightenment and awakening. And in his journey, I saw myself and my own journey into heaven. And that's what interests me so much about him, is that I learned so much from his teaching. And so much of his teaching is in the Gospel of Thomas. And he says in the second one, the one who seeks should not cease seeking until he finds. And when he finds, he will be dismayed. He'll be shocked. You'll be shocked when you suddenly see, when suddenly the veil opens for you, when suddenly in the moment of your life, timelessness ceases, time ceases, and you end up in a timeless space of awe. In that moment, we are often dismayed. And when you're dismayed, you're astonished by this, because suddenly the veil is torn open and you can see the light itself that's hidden from most eyes, from people just walking around most of their lives never see. Now, most people have some sort of opening like this, but maybe they ignore it. Maybe they don't accept it. Maybe it doesn't have meaning for them. Maybe they ignore it. Maybe they're afraid of it. But once you seek and never stop seeking, you will find, and when you find, you will be dismayed. And then when you're dismayed, you'll be astonished by the presence of it always here, And here's the kicker on this one. He says, and you'll be king over the all. And you'll be king over the all. Capital A. Capital A. The all in all. And you will see the all in all. It will be inside you and around you. And you will own it and it will own you. You will be part of it and connected to the all once you see. And then, 3, Jesus says, the one who seeks should not cease seeking until he finds. And when he finds, he will be dismayed. And when he's dismayed, he will be astonished. And off to 4, Jesus says, the person old in days will not hesitate to ask a child of 7 days old about the place of life. An old person will ask a child about heaven, and he will live, because children remember. Children remember heaven. Ask them. Ask them about their life before. For many who are first will become last, and they will become a single one. Many who come first will be last, and they will become a single one. For many who are first will become last. Those people who think that they're ahead of the game, they end up at the end of the line. Some of the last will be first, and some of the first shall be last. But everybody, whether they're first or last, will become a single one when you cross over. The division ends. The division ends and you become a single one. And when you seek the divine here in this life, you can find that singular point of clarity within yourself. It happens. It's true. It's real. Jesus talks about it when he says, when your eye is made single, your body will be filled with light, and the two shall become a single one. Everyone. So are you guys hearing me this morning? I don't even know. I'm looking over at the chat here, and I'm hoping that you can hear what I'm saying. Merry Christmas all. And Jesus said, come to know what is in front of you, and that which is hidden from you will become clear to you. For there is nothing that is hidden that will not become manifest. The kingdom of heaven is right here in front of us. It's right in front of us, and it becomes clear as soon as we open our hearts up to it. And as long as we seek it, the longer we seek it, the clearer it becomes. And then nothing is hidden from you. Nothing of the truth of the world is hidden from you. The truth of the world is that it's secretly made of love. For there is nothing hidden that will not become manifest. You won't be blind to it anymore. 6. His disciples questioned him, and they said to him, do you want us to fast? And how should we pray and give alms? And what diet should we observe? And what's his response? Don't lie. He doesn't talk about fasting. He doesn't talk about praying. He says, don't lie and don't do what you hate. For everything is disclosed in view of the truth. For there is nothing hidden that will not become revealed, he repeats. And there is nothing covered that will not remain undisclosed. Don't worry about what you're eating. Don't worry about fasting. Don't even worry about praying, he says. He says, don't lie. He says, live in the light itself. For when you're right inside the truth, all the rest of it doesn't really matter so much. All right, 7. Blessed is the lion, and this is a tricky one. Blessed is the lion, a person that will eat, and the lion will become a human. And anathema, one vehemently disliked, is the person whom a lion will eat, and the lion will become a human. Blessed is the lion that a person will eat. A person eats the lion, and the lion becomes human. The person eats the lion, and the lion becomes human. And Anathema is the person whom a lion will eat, and the lion will become human. It's very confusing. I can't say I fully understand this one. But what I think I understand about this one is that the lion is you blessed is the lion that a person will eat. We eat the ego, and then the ego vanishes. Maybe this is a tricky one. And an anathema, the one vehemently disliked, is the person whom a lion will eat, and the lion will become a human. Okay, so this one I'm not so clear about. It's pretty confusing. Let's go on. I'm not going to be stopped by that. 8. And he says, the human being is like a sensible fisherman who cast his net into the sea and drew it up out of the sea, filled with little fish. And among them, the sensible fisherman found a large, fine fish, and he threw back all the little fish into the sea, and he chose the large fish effortlessly. Whomever has ears to hear should listen. So that's a super important one. Oh, I see what people are, the lion thing, the animal nature could be. Yeah, all right, I'm going to look over here. Well, I'll let the chat go on its own. I'm going to talk about the human being here. Okay, so basically, the fisherman's out fishing, and he pulls up his net, and all these little fish, and one fine fish, and throws back all the little ones, all the little things, and takes the prize fish, the thing that matters the most, the divine self, the God presence. That's the large fish, and you take it effortlessly. It's no effort on the side, on the in the thinking or the action of the fisherman. Just takes the big fish. It's super easy. Jesus is saying, take the big fish and throw back all the little things. Throw back all the little things that you don't need and don't want with you, and take the big fish. That's what he's saying there. Number 9. Jesus says, look, a sower went out and he filled his hands with seeds and he scattered them. And some fell in the path and the birds came and pecked them up. Others fell on the rock and they did not take root in the soil and they did not put forth ears. And others fell among the thorns and they choked the seeds and worms ate them. I think they mean like caterpillars. And others fell on the good soil and it produced good fruit. And it yielded 60 measure and 120 per measure. In other words, the words of Jesus, the light itself falls all over the place, but not everybody gets it. But when it lands on the good soil of an open heart, it begins to grow, and its yield is immeasurable. 60 measure, 120 measure, so much more than you put into it. You put in a little bit, you get out a lot of it. It's the same stuff we've been talking about over and over again. Aim your heart at the oneness of being and gain all these gifts of God. Not the ones that you want, but the ones that God wants to give you, the fruit of the Spirit. All right, number 10. Jesus says, I've cast fire upon the world, and see, I'm guarding it until it blazes. So some of the fire he casts upon the world is the troubling aspects of his words to people. But I don't think that's what he's talking about. I think he's talking about the light of God that he brought, and he's guarding it in our hearts until it comes to a blaze on its own. It's going to blaze inside us on its own. I think that's what he's talking about. So I wanted to get through about 10 of these today, and I did get through about 10 of them today. And I'm going to take a look over on the chat in a second here. But I'm glad that you're all chatting and making your comments. It's super great. I'm glad that you're all participating. I'll see what everybody has to say about the lion in a second. The deeper you dive inside yourself, the clearer it all becomes. And I'm going to pull this out of the way here. There we go. And, you come join us on Monday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Not Church's meditation centering prayer, where you get to practice with us all the presence of God in ourselves by finding clarity inside ourselves and the stillness of the small voice. And we're going to have Mystic Tea Salon following this for an hour or so. And you can find that link at peterpanagore.love under programs, where you can find access to counseling too. And so thank you also to everybody who gave a little bit last week. That was super great. Thank you for Christmas. I appreciate it a lot. And I want to announce today that last week's book goes to Charles Kamada. He won the drawing. This is A Christmas Carol, and Charles, just let me know if you're here today, how to get that to you. And thank you, David, and thank you, Self Luminosity. Thank you for your gifts this morning. So, a couple more things. If you feel the radiance here today, let us know. Put it in the chat. If you have an interview today in Israel with IANS Israel, it's a new IANS group, International Association for Near-Death Studies. It's going to be translated into Hebrew. That's going to be cool for me, fun and exciting. But mostly I want to talk to you a little bit about the lion. I'm going to go back through and look at the lion and the comments. But as I'm trying to figure out what you guys want to hear from me. Do you want to hear more like what you heard last week with the Christmas Carol? Or do you want to hear a little bit more about the way I did it this week, sort of pulling apart the teachings of Jesus in specific? So one's a little more literary, one's a little more gospel-y. We can do some sort of combination between them, and we're not locked into any particular thing, particular style. All right, so I'm going to swing back to the top. The lion could be lots of ideas what the lion could be. It could be our human nature. It's a tough one. I'm not sure I get that completely, but I understand most of what he says. That's for sure. Let's see. Good morning, Peter. I have decided to forego. Oh, yeah. All right. Hi from all. I'll bounce over to there. Merry Christmas. Hello. Good morning. Good morning. Peter, your smile before starting said all I need to hear this morning. Thanks. Thank you. Greetings from West Bath, Maine. Hey, right down the river. I was in Bath yesterday over on the Thorn Nature Preserve. What a great preserve. Saw some couple of eagles and some whirlpools on the Kennebec River. Hi, Chuck from Richmond and Virginia from Wisconsin. Good morning, Wild Owl. Hey, Primary Feathers, just moved there. Alyssa, Rob, hey there, Rob, Kristen, Emily. What does it mean to be first or last in terms of the kingdom of heaven? Or what? Or that experience of oneness beyond the human veil? Okay, well, those are very big things. What does it mean to be first or last in terms of the kingdom of heaven? I think in the Gospels, in the canonical Gospels, it says, and some of the first will be last, and some of the last will be first. I'm pretty sure that's a fairly accurate quote. I think what it means is that those who set them up high in this world will discover that in the next world that they've made a mistake and that they thought they were first, and actually they're not first at all. It's not that they're at the end of the line. It's simply that what they believed was not correct whatsoever. It's not about the laws. It's not about the rules. And those who put themselves at the first of the line are usually putting themselves at the first of the line because of their ego and their self-aggrandizement and their pride, their spiritual pride. And those who put themselves at the end of the line are the humble folk. And really, it's about humility when it comes to God and living in the world. Humility is super key. And how do you attain humility? Merely by being in the presence itself and letting it tell you how big it is. And once you see how big it is, immense, infinite, then you're pretty darn small in comparison, and you put yourself last. You put yourself last. Maybe that's what it's talking about. That experience of oneness beyond the human veil. Well, that's the thing that can't be said, Emily. That's when the self actually dies. The ego actually dies, and there is no more ego left. And so it's super difficult to explain it. It's impossible. It's one of those things where you have to experience it for yourself. And there's just no way that I can possibly tell you about it. But I will try, okay? It is the recognition that you are the light itself, is the end of the separation from everything around you and everything within you, and a joining and an understanding that the false ego, the world itself, my own body, everything in the world is not the divine self. The divine self lives inside of all of it, but it's not the divine self in that it isn't all fragmented. It's all separated here. And on the other side, there is no separation. There is oneness of being where self is revealed to have been false. Okay, let me put it this way. Have you ever had that experience where you have that moment of timelessness, where suddenly you get to peek through the veil? If you've had that kind of experience, and it comes in 1,000 different ways, to all sorts of people, all different ways. If you've had that kind of experience, then you've had a glimpse of the oneness of being, just a glimpse of it. And that's enough for the lifetime. I wish I could explain the unitive state of being to you. It's where there is no self anymore. All there is adoration and bliss, connection to love, understanding and intellect, and no separation. It's like the moment of orgasmic ecstasy where you separate from yourself and join with another. It's sort of like that, only times a billion. There's no more separation in the oneness. I wish I could explain it better. Thanks for telling me that you can hear this. I did have a nice Christmas, Thomas. Thank you. Playing with my daughter, there is no sense of time. When you're playing with your daughter, there is no sense of time. Though this is how I know she remembers heaven and shares her love and joy, and her eyes are so pure and bright. Yeah, there's a light in kids' eyes. There's a light in kids' eyes. Lion is the ego. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too, Logan. Lion is the ego. Thank you for that. The lion is the animal nature. That makes sense, says David. Jesus, for years now, I've seen him as a teacher who was enlightened. I read a little from the book of Thomas. The reason it could have been included. Yeah. It's the book of Thomas was excluded because it talks about him being enlightened. That's what I think. Awakened being. What chapter in Thomas is this? It's the very beginning. It's the first 10 stanzas. All I want to transcend every time moment, but get called back. How does one stay in timelessness? One doesn't stay in timelessness. You can't while you're here. You can open yourself up to the divine presence. No matter what you're going to do when you're here, you're going to be in your body. So the best you can do is be in two places at once. You can be superpositioned. You can't stay in timelessness. The only way to stay in timelessness is basically to be dead. But here you can have this flow of peace inside you. You can become a channel of peace, and you can tap into the oneness of being. You can drive yourself down into it. You can ceaselessly pray. You can ceaselessly pursue. You can ceaselessly seek and drill down inside and tap into that thing that flows through you already, that's already inside of you. And by doing that, you get to have an undergirding, an undercurrent of timelessness inside you. But you can't stay in that space because every mystical experience has a beginning and an end. It's just the way it is. So our striving in our lives is an opportunity for us to dive deeper inside ourselves and to carve a deeper hole inside ourselves in our prayer life to be able to tap into the timelessness. But we can't stay there like all the time. Except it can run inside us as like a pivot point, as like a balance point inside us. And how do I know this? Because this is the way my life is. Way down deep inside, there is this connection to the timelessness, connection to the peace, so that every moment of my life, whether I will it with my ego self or I lean toward the divine in each individual decision, drives me deeper into the timelessness or away from the timelessness. And every time I lean into the light itself with my choices, I tap deeper into the timelessness, because The will with a capital W of the divine, of God, is that thing. And the more we lean toward it, the more we redeem ourselves, and the more we redeem the world around us, because we're always leaning into the divine, always leaning into the timelessness. And we do that in practice with meditation, but we do that in our daily lives. The deeper we go, the easier it becomes. Maybe it's hard to understand about the lion because humans not only wrote the Bible, but was also translated by humans. Yeah, there is that. There's the whole translation issues, Aramaic to Koine Greek to Septuagint, Latin to all these different languages, and then all these different interpretations. There's definitely that to it. That's for sure. The thing about the Gospel of Thomas is that it went pretty much directly from the Greek into English. So there's only one level of translation going on there. But even in the first couple of stanzas there, where it says, "Have a taste for death," another translation says, "Will not experience death, will not taste death, will not experience death." So there is sort of this, even in this more direct translation, it's from the Greek right to the English. There's some iffiness going on there. That's just the way it is with translating languages. Um, Sorry, found it. Short chapters. Yeah, they're super short. They're just basically a collection of sayings, sort of like the sayings of Buddha. Ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. There's no narrative to it. There's no story flow. There's no framework to it. Um, there's just the sayings of Jesus. And one of the reasons why I wanted to start with the Gospel of Thomas is because it's so devoid of theology. Hey, it's considered heresy by so many people. Um, they're all wrong, in my opinion. But also because it doesn't have a lot of theological baggage to it. We're going to begin delving into some of the Gospels, and I said a week ago that we're going to touch a little bit on the Christmas narratives today, and it seems like a good place to do that. So, Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, kind of in that order. That's where they were sort of written, maybe written 30 years later, Mark, maybe written 100 years later, somewhere 70 years later, 90 years later, 100 years later, something like that. There's definitely a progression from no Christmas narrative in Mark to making Jesus into the mystical being that we understand him to be in John. But in Matthew and Luke, that's where you get the Christmas narratives. Those came later because, well, like we could get into the reasons why they came later. But in the Gospel of Mark, it does not begin with a birth narrative. It begins with his awakening at the river Jordan when the dove descends upon him. That's when the story begins. That's the important part for the earliest gospel, not how he was born or when he was born or what the star was or any of that stuff. It has to do with his initial awakening. He's at the River Jordan. The dove descends. It's a metaphor. The heavens rend open. They rip open. Another metaphor. He sees through the veil and it enters into him. And then he begins his teaching life. And then he begins his teaching life. And someone gave a gift this morning. I didn't see who it was, but I want to thank you. It just was orange, and I appreciate that very much. It helps a lot. The lion, says Kristen. It may be what you eat, and it won't matter. If you eat it, it will become human. If, God forbid, you get eaten by a lion, it will become human. Oh, you are what you eat, right? Maybe that's what you're saying. You are what you eat. Even in the worst situation, the best will overcome. Yeah, even in the worst situation, the best will overcome. It may be what you eat that won't matter. I don't think what you eat really matters. If you Because so many people have so many allergies. I mean, somebody can't eat this, somebody can't eat that. So maybe vegetarian's important, maybe vegan's important, but maybe people can't eat soy or wheat, so they eat what they can. You eat what you can. Um, but I think maybe it's the ego too. You have to eat the ego. You eat the ego up by meditating on it, by chewing that thing up. Let's see. I don't want to miss anybody here. Good morning, everyone. The lion has been starting to learn more about Buddhism as someone based in Christian tradition. It seems close to the concept of learning to control your emotions. Yes. Okay. The difference for Jesus and the process of learning to control your emotions is that once you consume the lion, there's no more necessity to control anything. It becomes effortless, like that big fish. Um, that's a kind of a result of not awakening, but enlightenment. When the ego itself dies, when it's completely consumed, when you have the moment where you recognize that ego doesn't exist. It's not like it's just false. It's like it just does not exist at all. When that happens, when that happens, you become what? Realized, I guess. Awake, fully awake. The self is dissolved into the oneness of being, as Sue says. Rob, you remain human, but who is in control, the lion or you? Oh, yeah. Who's in control? That's a good point, Rob. The lion or you? Is your ego in control? Or is God in control? Is your human nature in control or God in control? And how do we find the God aspect of ourselves? By ceaselessly seeking, he says, in the Gospel of Thomas. Seek unceasingly, he says. Could be a reference to the Christmas carol, the selfish rich are the last, the poor humble people are first. Well, the Bible does take a preferential option for the poor. It really does. It takes an option for the widows and for the poor and the dispossessed. It does not aggrandizement. It doesn't raise up the rich or the powerful. It doesn't really like them. God likes the poor. And so, just as an aside, you got to wonder about modern Christianity. It doesn't take a preferential option for the poor. It raises up the rich. And it's a twisted sort of thing. Transcending the tree of knowledge of good and evil, society, and human experience, says Dan. Thank you, HJF2B me. Thank you. You're welcome. Colleen. Right, Colleen. Thanks, Colleen. Thank you very much. True, says Alyssa. True, Alyssa. Makes sense as wild owl. Sue Martin. And the lamb shall lie down with the lion. Yeah, that's like no more violence. The bully loves the victim. Yeah, it's that crazy in heaven where there is no differentiation anymore because everyone is made of love. Peter, do you have an opinion on the early Greek versions of the Bible or any other Christian beliefs? Do I have an opinion on the early Greek versions of the Bible? Like, I'm not sure what you mean by that. I know that they exist and that there are codexes that have Greek, the Aramaic in them, and it's always better to read the original versions. But I, didn't excel in Koine Greek, despite me being Greek, Opa, or other Christian early beliefs. Any early Christian beliefs that lean toward wisdom, that lean toward love, that lean away from theology and power structures, that leans away from exclusion to inclusion, that leans toward inclusion, that leans toward love, that steps outside the prevailing societal norms and aims toward seeing the light inside the other as the divine presence. All of those things. All of those things. And remember that the gospels were written by human beings with their own all have their own perspectives. We could pull apart a lot of that stuff in Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. But as I said, I like Thomas because it doesn't have that kind of baggage. There were a lot of early Christian beliefs. There's a lot of early Christian churches. There was no one single church. There were all these churches all over the place, from Rome to almost all the way to Beijing. There were early churches everywhere, and they all had very slightly different opinions on the way things are. I always aim towards the ones who are mystical, because there seems to be a unity across religions, across Christianity when we get to the mystical. I don't know if that helps or not. Only love is real, says Anthony. Love is God, and this is the truth. So, I want to talk a bit about love here for a second, because I struggled a lot with picking that word. It's because in the Upanishads, it specifically does not, I think it's the Upanishads, it specifically does not choose the word love because the writer did not want to confuse human beings with the idea that it was like human love. So they chose not to call it love. Jesus chose to call it love, even though it can be confused with human love. Well, human love is part of the storehouse of love, but it's not just love. It's so much bigger than that. It's infinitely larger than that. It's just how it best interacts with us. But it's all powerful and all knowing and bliss and paradise, awe, wisdom, knowledge, creator of the universe, creator of universes and star systems and microbes and it's so much bigger than that single word. But it's a pretty good word. It's the word Ryland. If I had to encapsulate it, which I think I have to, so I put it into that word love. God is love. That's close enough for our purposes, but it's not even close at all. Dan, equanimity without cravings or aversion. Yeah, that's what the clarity is. When nothing else satisfies except for the thing itself. That's what happens. That's what happens. When you have a union experience of the divine, nothing else satisfies. Not ever again. And so somebody said the other day, asked a question in Facebook on that near-death experience wall with like 50,000 people. And do you consider your near-death experience a curse, a blessing, or something in between? All of the above. Because once you have this experience where nothing else satisfies you, then nothing else satisfies you. And yet you're still stuck living in the world. It's this crazy thing. But it also gives you the sense of timelessness, this utter connectedness to the piece itself that's always continues on because it's so much bigger than the body and it's so much more infinite than the world. And one has access to it if you cease seeking the world and start ceaselessly seeking heaven. That's what the prayer life is all about. Jesus was a mystic, says Willie T., having a direct experiential relationship with God. And I think Mark gets it right. The birth of the significance is when Jesus emerged from the Jordan. Yeah, Willie T. I think that's it. All the rest of it is kind of added on to add to his mythic character, which is cool because it teaches us something about who he is, the mythologies around him. But I think that you're right. Mark got it closest to the actuality, is that Jesus was an awakened person, and that his entire life can be examined from that point of view and help us to find our own awakening. He becomes an example of a life lived from awakening to enlightenment. And there's a difference between awakening and enlightenment. Awakening is kind of what happens when you have the call that lands inside your heart. He was called to the Jordan. Jesus heard a call. So the story goes in Mark. Here's a call, and he goes to the Jordan, and he has an awakening. How many of you have had a call? That little thing that happened to you where your heart burst open, or you experienced timelessness for this moment, and then your life gets reoriented and you have this calling. You had the veil was torn open and you saw a glimpse of heaven, like Jesus, like him, beginning of an awakening. There is no single Christianity or Judaism. That is totally true. Thank you, Charles. Thank you. Hey, Charles, you won the book, so you might want to hit me up in private messenger so I can get it to you. Congratulations. Yeah, there's no single Christianity or Judaism. Does the Does the mystical include Gnosticism? I want to read more on that. Yeah, so Gnosticism is knowing, it's noetic wisdom. It's the being, it's the connection on the interior that has not much to do with the head and knowledge and thinking. It's the knowing on the inside that is placed there by the divine self, by God, by the experience of directly encountering God in your life, where the ego begins to die, where the lion gets consumed, to stick with the theme of the day. Yeah, so the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Mary, all of these are available online. I sometimes find them at the Gnostic Gospels. Type in Gnostic Gospels, it might be .org. Sometimes I find them at Wesleyan University, Wesley University in Ohio, I think is the name of it, or Wesleyan University in Ohio has a very large library online, free. That's why I read them all. It was free online. Um, the mystical includes Gnosticism. But really, truly, it's not ever about what you have to learn in your head. That helps, but it's always about the experience of the divine, which anybody can have. All they have to do is pursue the pursuer. The mystical isn't bound to doctrine. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Sybil. Thank you both. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's not tied to religion or doctrine. Rumi, Hafez, the Upanishads, Tao Te Ching. There's a lot of books out there. Jesus may be the best example, um, partly because the Western culture is so exposed to him, but partly because there's so much written about him, and his journey reads like a process of awakening. So, one of the differences is that he lives in his humanity. He lives in his humanity despite being incarnate in God, just like us. We live inside our humanity, even though we are incarnate light. We are poured into our bodies. We choose to come into our bodies. We pour ourselves into our bodies. And then we go through maybe an awakening process and help bring redemption into the world, but not like full redemption for the whole universe, but like just around us, bringing the light just around us. It's not, mysticism's not bound to religion. That's why people don't like it. That's why powerful people don't like it. It's sad how churches went to war and killed for orthodoxy, the Rome-centric exerting themselves with might, killing the Cathars, etc. Oh yeah, the church history is all about power. What is a church structure? But a collection of egos, and egos that are not awakened and connected to the divine love. Well, they have the same problems as a collective as they do as individuals, only they're more powerful as a collective. And we're suffering some of that in the United States right now with the pharisaicism of the literalist church, as a collective asserting their power over all of us, um, and not actually being in an awakened state of the divine, if I may be so blunt. I guess I am being that blunt. Agape love, right on, capital. John, do you think Jesus felt stuck in the world? Yeah, I think that at the very end of the Gospel of Mark, he gives his "Why have thou forsaken me?" cry from his cross. He's like, "What is this all about? This is really awful. This is really terrible. Why am I stuck here? Why have you forsaken me? Why have I gone through this?" I think he felt stuck sometimes. I do think he felt stuck sometimes. But listen how he lives his life. He is uncompromising. He's like Jean Valjean in Les Miserables. Jean Valjean in Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. He lives his entire life through that whole super great novel. It's like that thick. You can watch it as a movie, as a musical. It's very good. But Jean Valjean is consistent, and every single one of his actions in response to the world, he is unwavering. And Jesus is unwavering in every single one of his actions in response to the real world in which he lived, where he was in opposition to the Pharisees, where he's in opposition to the Roman power structure, and he never ever wavered. That must have sucked. Okay, that must have been awful for him. So yeah, I can see where he might have felt stuck in the world. But the more you become awakened, the more you tap into timelessness, the more you realize, until you have the union experience, that you are not from this world. And when you have a realization that you are not from this world at all, it's very freeing. It's creates conflict, but it's very freeing. Thank you, Mary, Charles, and Sybil again. Um, a craving that cannot be satisfied from anything in this world. That's what it creates. Nothing. So the downside of this is that nothing else satisfies. Things can distract, for sure. You can get distracted from that you're not satisfied. But once that distraction is over, the dissatisfaction returns because you realize you're not yourself. And so all you want is the oneness of being. That's all you want. That's all there is. And once you realize that's all there is, then what else has value? Only the big fish has value. Those little ones, no value at all. Yes, I have had a call, says Anthony, which was the start of your awakening. That's the way it starts. You get a call, you have a beginning of an awakening. I jumped on late and got interrupted, so I'll see you in the tea room a little bit later. See you then. We're going to be out of here in a few minutes anyway, because it's already 9 of. Legion 7, a possible translation: fortunate in the dark when consumed by a human, because it is transformed to light. Unfortunate is the human consumed by darkness, for the human is made lost. Fortunate is the dark, the lion, when consumed by a human, because it is transformed into light. Okay. Unfortunate is the human when consumed by darkness, for the human is made lost. Hey, Wendy, that's pretty darn good. Where'd you get that? That is kind of what I've been trying to suss out. Remember to like the video, please. Thanks, Capital One. Yeah, like the video and subscribe, please, and hit the alert bell, and let me know that this is working for you or not working for you. We've got 80. I saw 85 people here today, and now we got 81. This is great. I'm super glad that that you're back or you're joining us for the first time today. Ali, amen. Yes, absolutely. I'm being called to enlightenment, but avoiding it at times. Awakening is so profound. Enlightenment, I might explode. I'm afraid I can't handle it. Is that your ego? Yeah. Yeah. You should be afraid of it because it is the death of the self. It is the absolute obliteration of the self. But see, here's the thing. You're not really afraid of it. Your ego is. Your ego's afraid of it, but your ego's not even real. So what does it do? It shouts and stamps its feet like a 3-year-old having a tantrum. No, you can't do this. You can't do that. Me, 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 me. Yeah, I was afraid too, Even after I was consumed, I was afraid that I would be so fully consumed in the world, that I would be so distracted from the world that I wouldn't be able to live in the world. And my fear was misplaced. Even after being consumed by it, I was still a little afraid of it. And that's okay, because I live in the world. Jesus lived in the world, and he wasn't always behaving perfectly inside of his enlightenment. There was the fig tree that he cursed, and there was the tables he overturned, and the fact that on the night before he died, he tried to weasel out of it. Take this cup away from me. I don't want to do this. Stuck in the world, afraid of being consumed. My experience, Ari the Veil, is that oneness, being with God, is always available to us in the now. It requires transcendence of the ego, fear, but choosing love that is reaching through the veil the way. Yes, it is always inside us. The deeper you go, I have the same thing, Virginia. There's this channel that runs inside me that flows through me like a river, like a tube that runs right through me. And it's always there and it never shuts off. It's complemented by the presence inside me calling me constantly, the voice that has no sound. It is this thing that even in the midst of the world, it gives balance. It provides connectedness. And so, yes, you can experience it on a regular basis as you live, but it's always tempered by the presence of the world at the same time. So you can't be in the full timelessness of it, where there is no obliterate, where the self is completely obliterated, because you're still in the world in your body. And when the obliteration of self happens, when the false self dies, when the ego dies, it's a huge death, because that's as it's lived out in the world. But when you're in the state of unity, there is no more self. And as long as we're in the world, that kind of state has a beginning and an end. The residual aspect of it, the undergirding, the flow through you, that can remain and does remain, because Jesus, as he said, the kingdom of heaven is inside you. It really, really, truly is inside us. All right, my friends, it's 5 minutes of, and I see lots more questions and comments, but it's 5 minutes of, and I want to thank everyone for coming this morning. We'll spend a moment here. Um, I'll touch on Anita Majori at the very last thing here. The importance of the ego, which keeps us safe. Oh, yes, you gotta. It's not the ending of yourself and the world that it's your ending of your belief that you are that self. There's a difference. I still have an ego. I use my ego in the world all the time to function. You got to have an ego in the world to function. An egoless person in the world, I've never met one. Even the enlightened masters in the monastery where I used to go to, they still had egos, because they still had to function in the world. They were making beer now, or cookies in my day. They still had egos, but they transcended the false belief that their ego was themselves. Anyway, my friends, I got to meditate here for a second with you all. Hey, Dr. Allison, good morning. We're just tuning out. Meet us, Allison. Come to Mystic Tea Salon, peterpanagore.love, under programs. Love to have you there today. But let's spend a moment here and do a little meditation. Running out of time. All right, so 3 breaths. Open us to your words, so that when we read them, that we see your light inside them and understand them for what you meant them to mean. Give us the key to unlock your teaching. Give us the understanding of metaphor. Give us the presence of yourself, more important than anything. And let us share this together, that we might encourage each other on the path toward awakening and enlightenment, by sharing your divine light itself, by being channels of your peace. Amen. All right, my friends, I'll see you in 2 minutes. 2 minutes over at Mystic Tea Salon, peterpanagore.love, under programs, Zoom link live. Peace. Namaste. I love you. Jah Rastafari. God loves you. See you soon. Thanks for coming. Please like the video.